Macomb County makes sure it has its presence, and we go up there with a message. Well, as you can only imagine, there were three things that I wanted to talk about up there, besides the beautiful weather they were having. I'll get to that in a second. The beautiful weather, though, we did take full credit for that. I told them that was Macomb County weather year-round. It's always a balmy 80 degrees here in Macomb County. Now, those of you that live in Macomb County understand that that is slightly not true, fake news, I guess, for what this one guy calls it. But I did have a mission while we were up there to talk about three issues, and I got to tell you, they're most important on the minds of everybody here in Macomb County, and they are roads, roads, and roads, okay? But fortunately, we have a partner in Lansing, and I'm grateful to the residents and the citizens of Macomb County and the state of Michigan for giving of their votes and supporting this particular candidate to become our governor of the state of Michigan because she's done an incredible job, and that's been part of her mantra, is to fix what she calls the damn roads. Now, some people kind of looked at that with a raised eyebrow. Oh my God, she swore. Well, I'm going to tell you, I used a different word, all right? And a little bit more colorful, but thankfully the media didn't pick up on that. She's really been pushing this effort, and she's been working with the legislature. I'm going to tell you, my biggest thing in Macomb County style, and I think everybody recognizes that, it's just let's set the partisan politics aside. Let's try to figure out how do we solve problems here in Michigan, but in particular in Macomb County. And I've always had that relationship. Anybody wants to come to the table, set that differences aside. Let's see what we can move forward on together. And I'm going to tell you, I think over the very short tenure she has, as our governor, has done just that. Not just a conversation about it, not just a let's talk and see if we can't make this happen, but the willingness to bring people together to try to figure out how do we solve problems, and not to take away what she's going to be talking about. I'm going to allow her to do that. But the reality is, that's what's impressed me over this very short tenure, that she has served as the governor of the great state of Michigan. And so I'm going to be committed to continue to work with her on behalf of Macomb County residents, the region, as well as the state, to try to make sure that we get the things that are necessary to get done, and we make it happen here in Macomb County, but throughout the state. So I'm grateful that you all showed up. This is one of the largest crowds we've ever had for the governor. No offense, Mr. Snyder. I apologize. He's a good friend of mine. But I'm going to tell you, this is a packed house, and for good reason, because we are excited about the energy and where we're headed as a state. So allow me to introduce the real speaker for today, the governor of the great state of Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Governor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that introduction, and I appreciate that warm welcome. You know, I have been here in this hall with many of you a number of times over the last 8 months, once as a candidate, once as a new governor, and now, well, as a seasoned one with 5 months under my belt. But I want to thank the Chamber really for putting this event on and inviting me. I know that they sold out for this event in under a week, which is amazing, and tells me that the people of Macomb County really want to know about our state budget, which I think is the most exciting thing happening in Michigan right now. I'm being a little sarcastic with that, but I am really pleased to be here because this is a conversation that impacts every one of us. It impacts our kids, it impacts our workplaces, it impacts our economic future in the state of Michigan. Because a budget is not just numbers on a balance sheet. It is a statement of our values, and it is a statement of where we are going to be headed as a state. This is a phenomenal place that we call home. Evidence right behind me, behind this black screen here, this is a phenomenal place. And we have wonderful things to boast in this state. We have some serious fundamental challenges too. And that's what I'm trying to address with this budget. Now, we just came off of a week up at Mackinac Island where we celebrated some bipartisan work that we did on a serious issue that vexed us as a state for a long time. But we have to keep our foot on the gas and continue this work because we've got some fundamentals that we need to get our house right on right now. And so with that, I want to jump into our conversation. Of course, I'm going to start with the roads, but the roads by large is not the only thing in this budget. But I want to start with the roads, and I think it's important to start with a good laugh because it's going to get real in a minute. That's a joke. Kinda. But the state of Michigan is not a joke, and the state of our infrastructure is not a joke. And that's why I wanted to say Let's start with a laugh and get right into the program. And I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be pointing this somewhere. Okay, so we have a mural of kind of our state on this slide here. On the left-hand side is the Great Michigan Legacy, the state that people moved to from around the world for opportunity. When you came to Michigan, you could pretty much be guaranteed a job that would get you and your family into the middle class. It didn't matter where you lived, if it was in Macomb County or Gogebic County on the western end of the UP, your kids were going to have a great public school education. You could turn on that water with confidence, knowing it would be clean and safe for your family, and you could enjoy it for recreation. But also, you knew that you were in the state that had the best skilled workforce on the planet. But for 40 years, we've relied on those things, and we stopped investing in them. And as a consequence, we're now at a crossroads in this state, where all 4 of those things that I just mentioned are on the line. We have an opportunity here with this budget to make a bold change and to focus on the things that make this a great state, or to keep doing the same thing we have been doing and see the outcomes not change. And that's what this budget represents, a bold opportunity for the state of Michigan to move forward. Now, Mark talked a little bit about last week on Mackinac, this bipartisan work we did, and I'm showing you a picture from it because I think it's important that when we remember we're Michiganders first, we can find common ground on tough issues and solve them together. So the state budget is about $60 billion, and that sounds like a lot of money because, well, $60 billion is a lot of money. But when you look closer at the state budget, only that first line, the general fund, is what we really think of as government, state government. That's the part that funds the 48,000 state employees, whether they are state troopers, or it is the correction system, or it is the people that oversee our water cleanliness, or the people that educate our kids. That comes out of the general fund. Everything else on that balance sheet has strings attached, whether it's from Washington, D.C. or constitutionally. So as we think of what state government does, it's that general fund portion, the $10.7 billion. Now the problem with that general fund is that it has not grown in 20 years. So if you look at this slide, in 2000 it was $10.7 billion, and projected for 2020 it's $10.7 billion. So while the cost of everything else has increased, our ability to pay for it as a state has not. And that's really compromised us. Had that simply kept track with inflation, we would have about $5.6 billion more in the general fund than we have today. It would be over $15 billion instead of 10. Okay, Bobby, are you running this? All right, will you wait till I give you the high sign then? All right, he took away my clicker ability. Okay, so as a result, when the general fund hasn't increased over that 20-year period of time, and when our ability to build roads, the money for roads hasn't increased over that same period of time, our leaders started playing a shell game. They started moving money around because they had to triage an infrastructure problem that is downright dangerous. So in order to fill potholes, not rebuild roads like we should have been, but to fill potholes, they started taking money from the general fund. To shore up the general fund, they took money from the school aid fund. And so as a consequence, we are not doing any of these 3 things well. We are not rebuilding roads, we're just filling potholes. We're not increasing what should have been in the general fund to bring down the cost of a 4-year degree because we're just trying to keep our head above water, and our kids have paid the worst price for it because they're the ones on whose backs the budgets have been balanced. And as I said, this is a 40-year problem in the making. I'm not laying blame at one person or one party's feet. This has been a problem for a long time in the state of Michigan. Next one, thank you. So let's talk about roads. At any given time, a state's roads should be 90% of those roads should be good to fair condition. That means you should only be working on about 10% of your roads at any given time. Before the 2015 gas tax, which the legislature passed and convinced us all they'd solved the problem, this was the trajectory that we were on. As you can see, we were falling fast in terms of our roads in the condition that they were in. So they passed that 2015 gas tax, and that is represented by that green line. People ask me all the time, didn't they fix this with that gas tax? You can see they just slowed the decline. It was not a fix, and unfortunately, in Lansing, they knew it wasn't going to be a fix. But the public thought that happened, and that's why people are so frustrated. I am too. But you can see where we are on this graph and how fast we're falling. So that 90% line, we are now at 78% of our roads are in good to fair condition. And I know a lot of you are thinking, how on earth are we even at 78%, right? Especially if you've ever driven Mound Road. I know you're fixing it, Mark, but it's a glaring example of where we have, well, he is. But you can see how fast we're dropping. There's no such thing as the status quo when it comes to infrastructure funding. Either you are rebuilding or you are falling fast. And that's where we are in Michigan right now. We are not rebuilding, we're falling. And you can see that our per capita investment in infrastructure puts us in the bottom 5 in our country, dead last in the Midwest. And as a result, study after study shows that Michigan has the worst roads in the country. The state that put the world on wheels has the worst roads in the country right now, and they are downright dangerous. This is a map of where we have bad roads in Michigan. I use this map because there's a tendency in Lansing for people to think that this is an issue that plagues one community or another. But as you can see, this is a statewide crisis that we have. And I'll tell you, I said this on Mackinac, I'm going to update my presentation to have some of the slides. But what keeps me up at night is the prospect of a bridge collapse in this state. I was over in Dearborn, outside of the Ford Rouge factory, where they have 524 temporary supports holding up a bridge. They have a picture on the Free Press of a bus full of school kids going over it. That's what keeps me up at night. And you can see people have sent me pictures that they've collected. That is a cop in a pothole. That's a truck filling potholes stuck in a pothole. It's a couch in a pothole. But I think the sad story of when you steal money from your kids' education to shore up the general fund, which is being diverted to fill potholes, is that our outcomes for kids have suffered the most. We are dead last when it comes to reading proficiency growth in this country. 49 other states are better educating their kids than Michigan is right now. And that is a literacy metric that impacts everyone in this room, whether we're talking about your kids or not. This is the future of Michigan, and we're falling behind. And it directly correlates with this graph that shows we are last when it comes to growth in education investment. Those are correlated directly. And so while people talk about this budget about roads, this is what drives me more than anything in the budget that I've introduced. Now, the two more items I want to show you. One is about the skills gap. So I told you Michigan at one point had the best skilled workforce on the planet. Right now, only 45% of our adults have a post-secondary degree or certificate in an economy where it is an absolute essential to get into a good paying job. Too few of us have those degrees or certificates. So at the State of the State, I set our goal at 60%. Up until then, Michigan was the only state in the Midwest and one of only 9 in the country that did not have a formalized goal for post-secondary attainment. So we set the goal. Now we have to have the plan to make sure we execute and we achieve our goal. But that's where we rank in the bottom 20 right now. And this next slide is about PFAS. PFAS is a chemical that has been leaching into groundwater across Michigan. It is very dangerous and it compromises our health and our safety. And this is a map where we have known PFAS detection across Michigan. So cleaning up water, drinking water specifically, but all water, I'm looking at Candace Miller as I say this, is a priority in this budget as well. So we have to have goals, and they are aggressive goals, but by 2030, we need to be able to say Michigan is at 90% of our roads in good to fair condition. Hitting 90% is aggressive, but it is absolutely doable. Second, and this isn't going to wait till 2030, but I wanted to make sure it's on the list for our 4 top goals, to clean up drinking water across the state of Michigan. Third is to close the skills gap and make sure that 60% of our adults have that post-secondary certificate or degree. And fourth, to take Michigan to top 10 when it comes to literacy and other metrics in our public education system. Those are the goals. I want to take 1 second more on education. I don't want anyone to see these graphs and think Michigan kids don't have the same potential as kids anywhere else. I don't want anyone to take away that our educators aren't as dedicated. They are. And our kids have the same amount of potential. This is on us for not making the investment that we should have been in their education. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is to fund the roads and get that general fund money back into general fund expenditures and the school dollars back into our kids' education. That's why this is all connected. To get to $2.5 billion, which is what it's going to take to get our roads to 90% in good to fair condition in 10 years, it's a 45-cent gas tax. Now, I did an interview the other day, and the man said, I know you want to raise the gas tax. And I said, back up. I don't want to raise the gas tax. But this is the problem that we're confronting as a state. After years of denying it exists, or half measures, this is the problem that we're facing. When we take it head on, we can close the skills gap, educate our children, and clean up drinking water as well. So I know that this isn't going to be easy for some people to absorb, 45 cents. That's why we phase it in 3 increments, going from 15 cents to 30 to 45. It's why we doubled the earned income tax credit for the working poor, and why repealing the retirement tax for seniors on a fixed income were ways that we could give people who are going to struggle the most some relief. And every one of us is going to have relief in the form of smaller bills to remedy our car problems. The average driver in Michigan is spending $646 a year on new rims or new tires or windshields or collisions. When we fix the roads, those bills go down too. So we'll use great materials, we'll have warranties, it'll be long-term savings, and the thing about a gas tax is that it is constitutionally guaranteed to go to the roads and bridges. And so that shell game I described earlier cannot be played when we raise the money at the pump. Article 9, Section 9 of our state constitution means that every dime that we pay, that $23 a month that the gas tax represents, will go into fixing the roads and bridges, and people can't move it around later. And this is what it does. When we make that kind of investment, we get to 90% of our roads by 2029. It still takes a while because we've got so much work to do, but it puts us on the path. It is the right number to get us there. It gives us the ability to close the skills gap by educating our kids in a way that promotes better outcomes in terms of literacy, bringing down class size, getting great teachers to stay in and come into education, increasing CTE programs. There's some phenomenal CTE programs here in Macomb County, increasing dollars for at-risk students and for special education. When the general fund money goes back in the general fund, we can upskill our adult population. So the Michigan Reconnect is modeled after the Tennessee Reconnect, and that's how we can ensure that adults have a chance to get skills that get them into higher wage jobs, and the My Opportunity Initiative, which is for graduating high schoolers to go into a debt-free community college opportunity or into bringing down the cost of a 4-year degree. So this is how we close the skills gap. And then cleaning up drinking water. So there's $120 million in my budget to clean up water through new infrastructure in terms of the pipes underneath the ground, and $60 million for hydration stations in school buildings that have old lead pipes bringing the water into the buildings. And there is truth in taxation built into this budget, meaning the shell game stops. So the dollars at the pump will go into the roads. General fund dollars go into general fund expenditures, and the school aid fund dollars go back into our classrooms for our children. Every community can click on the state website and see what roads in your area are going to be prioritized. Right now, road funding goes through a thing called PA 51. It is a public act from 1951. It's 68 years old. And it's prioritized roads not in big urban communities, communities that are contained in Macomb County, Oakland County, Wayne County, the places that have the most damage and the most economically viable and important roads would be prioritized in this budget. And so it is a reset, and Southeast Michigan benefits a great deal. And you can also click on any school district across the state and see what it means for the kids. This is the biggest investment in kids' education in Michigan in a generation of Michigan children. And it is the way that we change those metrics and take us to be in the top 10 just by putting the school aid fund dollars into schools the way that it was supposed to be in the first place. There are a lot of great things in this budget, but I hope you'll see that while we have divided government, while I could lead on all sorts of divisive issues I know we'll never find common ground on, I built a budget around getting the basics, the fundamentals right in this state that benefit people from the west side to southeast Michigan, from the UP to the lower peninsula. Democrat and Republicans benefit from this, business and individuals. When we get the foundation solid, every one of us benefits. And with that, I simply want to thank you for making time to be here and ask that you jump in and help me get this done, because every one of us will have a better quality of life when we do this and we do it right. Thank you.
I picked this question because I really wanted to swear on the microphone in front of everyone. Will your proposed plan to fix the dam roads include funding for local roads as well as state highways? Our city roads are in bad shape.
So I appreciate that question, and I'll just add this, it fixes the dams and the roads too, by the way. I have revenue sharing increase built into this budget. It's roughly 3%, which is an enormous help to local communities, as well as this new way of dispersing revenue prioritizes, as I explained, areas that have the oldest, worst roads in combination with the economic viability. And that's a way that gives us the ability to really highlight and focus on Macomb County, Wayne, Oakland, Kent County, big centers, big population centers across Michigan. So there is an increase at the local level as well in this plan.
You mentioned Act 51 in your presentation. Do you see any movement in changing Act 51?
No, that's why I went around it. I'll just be honest with you. Changing Public Act 51 geographically pits a lot of people against one another. And it's been tried in the past, and so many other leaders have been stymied by it. And so that's why we thought if we ran this additional money through a new way of dispersing it, those communities that have received Act 51 dollars, in the current way that we fund roads will continue to do so, but all of this additional will be prioritized based on the worst roads and the most economically viable. And so it was a way of trying to thread that needle without turning everything upside down and creating so many problems where you don't get anything done.
The campaign supporting marijuana. What is your stance on this today?
On supporting well, the voters spoke, and we legalized, and that's why I take very seriously the state's role in promulgating rules. Unfortunately, when we passed medical marijuana in 2008, it was not taken as seriously by our state officials as it should have been, and they did not promulgate rules, and that's why we ended up with the wild, wild west when it came to medical marijuana. And so we are working to ensure that that doesn't happen on the general recreation side. But since we're talking about marijuana, one of the questions I often get when I present the budget is, what about marijuana taxes to fix roads? Was that on anybody's mind in this room? Okay, I see a few people nodding. I've put a solution to the road problem on the table, and there's not yet been a viable alternative that's been suggested. Some would suggest maybe we should consider marijuana. It only raises $42 million at the height of it for infrastructure. And we have a $2.5 billion problem. And so I take, our regulation over marijuana very seriously, and we're working to put those policies and enforcement in place. And while it will generate some revenue, it will never tackle the road problem that we have in Michigan or even come close to it.
Any thoughts on bringing back tax incentives for the film industry in the state?
So, I was approached up on Mackinac. Someone told me that they're working on a biography of Aretha Franklin and that they're going to be filming it in Chicago, which that really bummed me out. I want to figure out how we can get it into Michigan. But the fact of the matter is, we had a pretty robust film industry here in Michigan when we had the incentives. They were done away with, and it's largely dried up. I know that the worst thing for business, any business, is the change in rules that happens every few years. And so as we debate whether or not to support tax incentives, something that I always supported when I was in the legislature, I am also mindful that we have to figure out how to make sure that we get the return, that we have accountability, and that we have a balanced budget. So it's certainly something that I have said I'm open to, but we'd have to be able to answer all of those questions well and have a plan to ensure that it doesn't hurt the budget.
That's it for our questions today. On behalf of the chambers, I'd like to give us a big round of applause to the governor and thank her for spending this afternoon with us.
Thank you. I'm not giving up this microphone without leaving with an ask. So here's my ask for you. If you've seen something in this presentation, whether it's the education piece or the skills gap, or it is water, or it is the roads and infrastructure, and you see why the choices I've put on the table are the ones that I've made, and it makes sense to you, I ask that you get active, that you share your thoughts with your legislators. There are some fantastic people that represent Macomb County in the state legislature, and they need to hear from you, and they need your support. If you think that this is something that makes sense, let them know and give them the support that they need to help me fix these problems. This is a great state, and we're going to make it one where our kids stay and other people come too for opportunity again. We're going to do it together, and I need your help. So thank you all so very much. Enjoy this gorgeous day.